Hello, gracefully chosen community, and welcome to Foster My Stories, the achievement focused podcast for foster care, adoption, orphan, inclusive of underserved communities. I'm your host, Shalina Michelle Tate. On today's Relate to You, I'm going to be highlighting gracefully chosen content relative to the foster, adoption, orphan, or underserved. If you are a new listener or returning, welcome and welcome back. I more than anyone understand that being related to any of the mentioned communities isn't always seen in a positive light. Therefore, this segment desires to celebrate the movies, public figures, and books that may better connect to your situation or understanding. So, let's jump in. Kinship care is the full time care, nurturing, and protection of children by relatives, members of their tribes or clans, godparents, step parents, or any adult who has a kinship bond with a child. So I was talking to a lady not too long ago who was saying, hey, I was raising my grandchild from birth, and the grandchild is like now 4 or 5 years old. I mentioned to her about kinship care. You can talk to your local agency about kinship care. So, of course, you know that this podcast relates to the foster, adoption, orphan, and underserved communities, and kinship care would be really considered foster care situation, but it's with relatives. So if you would like to inquire more about kinship care, contact your local agency and they can walk you through the steps on getting started. Speaking of kinship care, there's a movie I want to highlight for this month called Black or White. It's about a grieving widower who is drawn into a custody battle over his granddaughter, whom he has helped raise her entire life. Stars Kevin Costner, a veteran actor who starred in this movie called The Field of Dreams. If you have not before, check out that movie. It's called The Field of Dreams. Phenomenal movie. I think you and your family would really like it. Also, it stars Octavia Spencer, who starred in another movie with Kevin Costner called The Hidden Figures. It also stars Taraji P. Henson. It's about a historical group of women set back in the 1960s. They basically helped coordinate the launch and landing of astronaut pilots into space. Kind of controversial, a lot of people say no, they didn't help, but this movie says yes, they did help, and it's controversial because they were all black. All right, so not only does this movie deal with a look into kinship care, but the reality of Jillian being biracial, a topic that is often inquired into when dealing with youth in the foster, adoption, orphan, and underserved communities. However, like with any of these communities, families and caregivers should focus really on the importance of meeting the youth right where they are, despite ethnicity or upbringing limitations. This film is rated PG-13. As with anything presented here on Foster My Stories, I ask that you check it out first before engaging in it with your families or gracefully chosen youth in your care. All right. Once again, that movie was called Black and White. It's 2014 version with Octavia Spencer and Kevin Costner. Next up, we have a public figure for February. I wanted to highlight CoCo Chanel, born Gabrielle Bonheur. Her early years were anything but glamorous. At the age of 12, after her mother's death, Chanel was put into an orphanage. She was raised there at the orphanage by nuns who taught her how to sew, a skill that would later lead into her life's work. Her nickname CoCo was coined from her brief career as a singer in clubs within Vichy and Moulins. Some say the nickname comes from one of her songs that she used to sing, yet Chanel has stated it was a shortened version of cocotte, spelled Cocotte, which is the French word for kept woman, according to an article in The Atlantic. So today, Coco is known globally as CoCo Chanel, becoming famous for her timeless designs, trademark suit, and little black dresses. In the 1920s, she launched her first perfume and eventually introduced the Chanel suit and the little black dress, with an emphasis on making clothes that were more comfortable for women. Chanel became a much revered style icon, known for her simple yet sophisticated outfits paired with great accessories such as several strands of pearls. The actress Audrey Hepburn became a recognizable example of wearing an iconic long black dress with pearls and long black gloves in the movie Breakfast at Tiffany's. Dynamic movie if you ever get a chance to watch it. Although French designer Herbert de Givenchy is credited with the design of that black dress, Chanel, as you can imagine, is credited with invoking the inspiration. To learn more about the life of Coco Chanel, please visit www.bio.com, is short for biography.com, and www.rd.com, that's the Reader's Digest, to check about Megan Jones's 2019 article, the story behind Audrey Hepburn's Breakfast at Tiffany's dress. And last but certainly not least, the book of the month of February is called The Language of Flowers on Amazon.com via Kindle for $13.99. It's a free Audible book, or you could purchase the hardcover for $19 and the paperback for $10.99. So let's get into it. The Victorian language of flowers was used to express emotions: honeysuckle for devotion, azaleas for passion, and red roses for love. But for Victoria Jones, it has been more useful in communicating feelings of like grief, mistrust, and solitude. After a childhood spent in the foster care system, she is unable to get close to anybody, and her only connection to the world is through flowers and their meanings. Now 18, Victoria has nowhere to go and sleeps in the public park where she plants a small garden of her own. When her talent is discovered by a local florist, she discovers her gift for helping others through the flowers she chooses for them. But it takes meeting a mysterious vendor at the flower market for her to realize what's been missing in her own life, and she starts to fall for him. She's forced to confront a painful secret from her past and decide whether it's worth risking everything for a second chance at happiness. The Language of Flowers is a heartbreaking and redemptive novel about the meaning of flowers, the meaning of family, and the meaning of life. And so let's recap. The movie of the month is Black and White, starring Octavia Spencer and Kevin Costner, who also worked together in a movie called Hidden Figures. The public figure of the month is CoCo Chanel, who is known for her little black dress and pearls, which is considered iconic, and also now notably her perfume. The book of the month is called The Language of Flowers, written by Vanessa Diffenbaugh, which is also on Amazon.com, and she is a New York Times best-selling author. Being on the park bench, a lot of times that's a harsh reality. Not really having anywhere to go, not really having a family or family members you can go to and or trust. And then it sounds like her situation, she's had some kind of past trauma. And so what it's like to oftentimes be in a emancipated youth from foster care, adoption, orphan, or underserved communities, a topic I'm going to touch on a little later on during the year. Okay, if your upbringing, community service, or job connects you to the foster, adoption, orphan, or underserved communities, I would love to have you on the podcast. You can send a guest request over to info@fostermystory.com, and that is spelled Frank Mary Story with an I, not a Y.com. Make sure to tune in Wednesdays at the official time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, via any of the platforms convenient to you. There is the Red Circle podcast, which I've started from, but it has expanded to Spotify, Amazon Audible, Amazon Music, Radio Public, or at Google Podcast. There, you can catch missed episodes or stay connected for upcoming guests and content. And remember to tell someone being fostered, adopted, orphaned, or underserved simply means they're gracefully chosen. And thank you so much for your time. You can share this content, listeners. Reach out and foster this story. You have a dynamic rest of your day.